With the GMTK approaching, I like it to make smarter moves so you can leverage your project moving forward. Think with me, what is more likely to be a commercial success? A project that you invest all your resources through 2, 3, maybe 5 years, hoping that when you launch it, it will pay off and maybe you have some profit with it. Or you can split your projects into many mini projects or many complete projects that you can leverage on the success or the resources that you create on the previous ones. Well, I think that both are very valid approaches. We have examples like Notch with Minecraft and Eric Baron with Stardew Valley that, well, they basically just have a single game and it was a success. But I think that this business model only works if you already validated the project early on, so you don't spend a lot of resources on something that no one actually say they want. These projects already made some success even before launching. I remember that when I was like uh, 14 or 15 years old, I remember playing Minecraft like alphas and betas before actually launching. And it was already like populated with many players, so we had a huge and massive community back then. But most companies already work with this kind of model that they have a product, something that they already validated, and they just improve this product so that they can reach broader audiences, right? So for instance, we have like Coca-Cola, right? Coke. Coke now has like those zero sugar sodas, and now the fitness audience is drinking soda as well, where before they were totally against drinking soda. And now most of the nutritionists recommend drinking soda not as a substitute for any other drink, but just so you fulfill this sugar craving, right? But the entertainment industry is a little bit different because we have something peculiar in this regard. You can't, like, well, you can't is a very strong word, but it's very unlikely that the next time that you watch a movie or play a game, you have the same feeling that the first time, especially movies. But games are also very difficult to add replayability elements. This is one of the reasons why roguelike is becoming a business model instead of like a genre. Many roguelike games are being released these previous years, right? So especially this year, there is a lot of roguelike games. We have Balatro, we have like Hades, so on and so forth. But a standard business model for the entertainment industry is to invest the resources on content production. So launching more products basically. So the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, has what, 20 movies already with dozens of series to support the main product, which is the Avengers, right? So it's very time consuming and resource consuming to work with entertainment because you always have to push new content to your customers. In case of games, you can work with something like DLCs or something like that, but you have to expand your game universe somehow. There are some business models that can work with that. So for instance, the subscription based model. So you ask your players to pay a monthly subscription fee or something like that to keep them fed with new content on your game, so you can work on the game and uh, offer new content for your players. There are other types of business models as well that can support this kind of single product business models. But this takes into account that your players already want to play it, that they love your game, and that your game specifically supports this kind of business of episodic model or DLC based model. So for instance, Stardew Valley, correct me if I'm wrong, has a lot of DLCs, but we have a lot of examples for this kind of business model. But this assumes that everything is on place, people are playing, people are loving, you have money to invest, you have a buffer so you can work for, let's say, a month on your game. But unfortunately, what happens is that most of the time we launch a game and nobody hears about it, right? So we don't validate our product, especially we don't validate with local communities. We don't have a small community that actually wants to play the game, and we just launch it without marketing and so on and so forth. And this becomes a process where you always have to work from scratch, right, on the next project. So you have to work instead of having throwing your resources on a single project. You typically what we do is to make multiple projects, launch multiple projects, and see what sticks or what resonates better with our audience. And this kind of business model is not very productive if you think about it. If you don't make it right, every time you make a new game, you'll be working with a blank screen, right? You won't have anything. And I like you to change that. I like you to think in better terms, to be more productive. So usually what people do is that most game developers think on the issue or the problem they need to solve for any specific project. They are very short-term oriented. So I have to fix this issue for this project because this is what matters most right now. They don't think on the long run, on the long term. So instead of making a specific and ad hoc solution, they should make a generic solution that would work regardless of the project, right? And something that I want you to visualize is let's make an example, right? So let's think about an RPG. And in this RPG, we want to make an interactive world. So we have NPCs that trigger dialogues, we have objects that players can collect, we have some portals or doors that players can interact with, so they can be teleported to another zone of the game. And typically what developers do in these cases is that they will have something like a method on the player's class that will detect if players are overlapping with something that is interactive, and if players press, so input dot is action press interact, and based on that they will filter if this object is inside a given group, or in case of Unity, if this object is with a given tag. This is so much the people from Unity. So if you came from Unity, I bet you've already done that, because usually classes in Unity and tutorials for Unity try to make like monolithic scripts, overloading the player class with many responsibilities. But this happens on Godot as well. It's very common, especially for beginners, to give more responsibilities to the player class than it should have. I'm tired of seeing something like, if area is inside this group. Guys, groups in Godot Engine are not made for that. It's made for batch calls, some methods, and so on and so forth. I'm not going into details, but groups are not meant to be labels, right? Do you see the problem if you have something like, if this object is inside the interactive group and this object is inside the door group, teleport them, or open the door, call a method on the door. But if this, you make kind of like a switch statement. So if this object is inside the group, I think we can make a switch statement with groups. So we have to make a if statement. So if object is inside group door, call open method on the door object. If this object is inside the NPC group, call the show dialog method. Something like this. It's so weird. So you have these ad hoc solutions, and can you see the problem here? Every time you add a new type of object, a new behavior, a new type of interaction that players can have with this said object, you have to add a new conditional statement on the player's class. You run the risk of adding a new bug to the player class that can make your game unplayable. And I think that this is not the best way to do things, especially because afterward, this player class will, after you launch your game or something like that, this player class will completely go to the bin, to the trash bin, because you can reuse something unless you just create many RPGs that is basically just reskins of the same project. This is not going to work. But what I like you to do here is to think in terms of systems instead. So for this same feature where you can interact with objects in your game world, in your RPG game world, think about a interaction system. In this case, what is a system? A system is the definition of how elements or components will interact with each other. This is basically what a system is. But for systems to work, especially to integrate with another system, you have to think in terms of, okay, what this system will process and what will be the output of this system. In this case, this system will process whether the player is close or isn't close to a given interactive object, and if the player press the interact button, right? And what the system will output is an interaction, or it will notify other systems about players' interaction. So if players get close to a given place or close to an interactive object or an interactive area or something like that, it will emit a signal in case of the GD script, right? Saying players interacted, or we can just call it interacted, a signal called interacted. And so we can emit this signal once players are within this given area, close to this specific object. The only issue that we have here is that, well, most of these features are already solved using an area2d, right, which is a node. And every node can listen to players' input. So we can already use the unhandled input process to process if the players press a given key. But if you have multiple instances of this object, what you have is that when players press this interact action, it will trigger every other object as well. So the first thing that we need to do is to disable the input handling processing, or the unhandled input processing, on every instance of this, let's call it interactive area to the object. By default, it will start disabled. It will only be enabled again once it detects that a given area is overlapping with it, so on player or on area entered. And once this area leaves, so when we don't detect an area within this area2d, the interactive area2d, we are going to disable the unhandled input processing again, so that we can control that it will only listen to player, it will only process input events once players are within its boundaries, right? Well, to do that, we will basically need two components in this system. Let's call it the passive component will be the interaction area2d, which is basically an area2d that is monitorable and doesn't do anything else, and the interactive area2d, which is the active element of this system, which is going to detect if this interaction area2d is within its collision shapes, and if so, it's going to trigger it's going to toggle its input processing. After that, if the players press this action, it will emit a signal notifying that players interacted with this specific area2d. So we have these components, and to make sure that only the interaction, the element, the components of this interaction system will interact with each other, so the interactive area2d and the interaction area2d will only interact with each other and with no other systems, we can add them to an exclusive physics layer. So for instance, we can create a physics layer, we can label a physics layer like interaction layer, and the interaction area2d will be inside this collision layer, but it's not going to mask anything, because otherwise it will detect if another interaction area2d will overlap with it. So it's going to be inside a given collision layer, but it's not going to mask any physics layer. On the other hand, the interactive area2d is not going to be on any physics layer, so that we prevent that interactive area2ds interact with each other. They will only interact with the interaction area2d. So we're going to remove them from any physics layer, and we're going to make them mask only the physics layer, the interaction physics layer. So this will ensure that only these two components will interact with each other. So we don't have to make something like, is this node inside this specific group? We don't have to label them. And there we have it. You have a system that you can attach to any object in your game. This doesn't make it so that if you add this component to if you add this feature to a specific object, you have to like inherit this object. Typically, what people do instead of making this system-oriented design, they will do something like that. Either they will do a class, an interactive object class, that anything that is interactable will inherit from, and they will override the interact method. And once the players is overlap this specific area and press this interact action, so the input, right, the interact button, they will call this interact method on this object, and depending on the type of this object, this interact method will perform something different. So if it is an NPC, we'll have an inherited class that is an NPC, that is an interactive object that overrides this interact method. And inside this interact method, we'll have the NPC displaying a dialogue or something like that. Well, we already know that this is the worst approach to object-oriented design. You should keep in mind, if anything from this video, keep this in mind. Favor composition over inheritance. This is the reason why thinking in terms of systems and components within these systems is way better than thinking in terms of trying to abstract a world object like an NPC, an interactive object, a superclass interactive object that, well. But this system is now something that you can take with in any project, because it's project agnostic. It doesn't depend on anything specific from any object, from any project. So you can apply this to an RPG project. Any new project that you make, you can basically import this system inside of it, and this problem is solved like forever. You don't have to deal with this specific project or with this specific problem anymore. This is solved, closed. You can basically port this project to this system to your next projects, and you can focus on the other features, making your project unique, because you have more time to focus on what matters for this specific project. So you have already the interaction feature solved. You can import this project, and now you just have to tell, okay, when this interaction happens, what will happen in this specific project. So you can work on what makes this new project unique instead of solving the same issue, reinventing the wheel every time. And if you want to make adventure games such as RPGs or platformers with story elements, or visual novels or roguelikes, any narrative-driven game, I want to present my Godot Adventure Essentials course. Learn 5 essential systems that you can use on adventure games and create your very own adventure within 5 days. The interaction system that I presented in this video is just one of these 5 systems that I showcase on this course. So together with the event system, the dialogue system, the quest system, and the saving system, the interaction system, and these other 4 will provide you with tools that you need to create adventure games. So if you are interested, I'm going to add the landing page on the link in the description so you can check out what the course is all about. I also have a free class which is all about this interaction system that I presented to you, so you can check it out and see the methodology of this course and see if it fits your approach to learning. And if you want to check out how do all these systems, these 5 systems, integrate in an actual game, the next week I'm going to live stream the integration class, which is an extra class where I'm going to create the Martians Rescue quest, where players are going to be requested to defeat Ares that gone berserk, and they will complete this quest, get some rewards. And if you want to ask something and solve any questions that you have regarding the course or even regarding the systems that I'm going to present, this is your chance to get in touch and solve all your questions and get your questions answered regarding these topics. So the link will be in the description. I will require you to subscribe to my mailing list so that you can get notified about when this live stream is going to happen. I don't have it planned yet because I have to prepare all the material that I'm going to share. But as soon as I have this, you are going to be notified. And you can add the notification on YouTube so that you can participate on the live stream as well. But that said, thank you so much for watching, keep developing, and until the next one, see you there.